So we can start by settling into a comfortable position that supports alertness and awakeness. And even taking a moment to thank ourselves for being here, for taking the time to support our awareness. For taking the time to really learn how our minds work. Just beginning by finding an anchor that supports some calming of the mind, whether that anchor is the breath, whether it's the body, sounds, whatever's most available right now. Noticing how quickly our minds might wander off, thinking that whatever this object that we chose to ground our awareness is not as interesting as something that our mind can come up with. Perhaps even noticing a familiar voice in our head. It says, oh, let's think about this vacation that we're planning. As it kind of winks at us and encourages us to sneak off into this little fantasy of future thinking about whatever, this vacation or whatever it is that's certainly more interesting than paying attention to the breath or the body or sounds. We might even notice that this voice has friends, and these friends see that this voice is getting our ear, so they start coming in and say, no, you should really fix that problem with your neighbor. As it tries to get our attention so that we can go and try to mentally solve what we're going to do about our neighbor, perhaps for the 400th time. Or another voice that comes in. It's a little quieter. It says, oh, you never listen to me. It says, well, that thing you did earlier today at work or at school, I can't believe you did that, I could really get you in trouble. And then you get lost in that thought loop of worry and regret, shame. Whatever the voice is or voices are that are competing for our attention, first thing to notice is how pervasive they can be. How we might not even notice them if we're not here really encouraging ourselves to pay attention. Giving ourselves the space and the quiet to notice as they arise. The second is to notice how easily they can trigger us and how quickly we can be lost. The third is to notice that seductive quality, if we can. We're triggered, we're seduced, and then we're lost. And perhaps the hardest to even notice, we might not even notice, is what the result is. What do I get from having been lost in one of these thought streams? As we wake up from this disoriented reverie, not having solved the problem with our neighbor, beating ourselves up more over something we've done earlier in the day or the week, or whatever that particular voice is that we happened to indulge in that moment. So how do we work with this? Any moment that we notice that we wake up from the reverie, we can notice any of those three things. That trigger, whatever it was that triggered us to get lost. That urge or that seductive call of that voice. Or even the result of being lost. We can simply rest in awareness each time we wake up. We can start with the triggers and simply name those voices. There's fear. There's worry. There's regret. Whatever simple name each one might have. Each time we can see them clearly, it helps to frame them so our perception can see them very clearly. We're less likely to get triggered and sucked into a thought stream. So we can begin there, simply seeing how many of these voices might be present right now during this next period of time. Practice naming them. Simple, one word. You don't need full Wikipedia entries on each of these. Simply naming them, being able to recognize and name, so that we can squarely see them and face them. Oh, here's fear. noticing if we're judging any of these voices in our head. Simply seeing if we can place that off to the side, or even if that's another one of these voices, judgment. Simply curious, naming them. It's like we're a biologist naming new species of animals that we're finding on a new island. Not preferencing one over another, simply naming them all. And so we've gone around really rested in awareness, noticing any of these voices, name them. We can also start to notice their particular qualities. Which of them have that sweet, seductive, mischievous, hey, this is fun, let's go. Noticing that feeling tone that comes with that voice. Oh, fantasy, I'm in. Noticing the ones that fall into this category as compared to that aversive category. It includes fear, worry. It says, if you don't do this, something bad will happen. Seeing if we can not only name that voice, but really tap in when that voice comes up to that feeling tone that comes with it. Are we seduced? Are we sucked in? Or are we gripped? Are we driven by some unpleasant quality? Some aversive tendency that says, do something to make this go away. So just adding this as a second layer. If the awareness and interest is strong, noticing the effects that these have on these voices as we name them, as we get interested in those feeling tone qualities that they have with them. Noticing if this helps us stay present and not sucked in. Yet so often these voices are so ingrained or so convincing that we do get sucked in. So here's where we can bring in the third step. When we wake up from being lost, simply taking a moment to start by grounding ourselves in our body or our breath. And then reflecting just for a moment, experientially. What did I get from that? That lost in that fantasy. If it was being seduced into reveling in our previous vacation or fantasizing about one that we're about to take, what does that actually feel like right now? Does it lead to more of an anticipation or a longing to be there? How does that compare to just simply resting in awareness of what's happening right now? If we were lost in a vendetta or solving habit loop, did it magically get solved this time? Number 401 was the perfect one. I got it this time. Or was it just another rehash of what our mind has gone over and over 400 times before with? How does the body feel from that? Is it discouraged? Is it tense? And how does that relate to simply resting in a curious awareness? Not analyzing, but simply taking a moment in an experiential, in a non-thinking way, but simply checking in with whether we're lost in any of these fantasies. What do I get from this? So that we can clearly see the results of those mental actions. And if we see that we haven't gotten anywhere, it might help us remember this for the next time that we're lost in this loop. So 3 aspects to play with: naming and noticing the triggers, fear, worry, excitement, whatever. That second part, the feeling tone, the seductive quality or the aversive quality that comes with it. And if we get lost, just taking a moment to reflect, to see what we can learn, so that we can see clearly the results of these old mental habits. So that our brains can learn a little bit. Oh. And if at any time this becomes too much or feels like too much of an exercise, simply resting in awareness of the body or the breath. These anchors, always available. for the last few moments of this practice, just taking a moment to reflect on those moments when we noticed and named those voices. What was it like to become aware of them versus being lost? Did this help to not feed their stories, to not feed these habits? What was it like when we woke up from having been lost in a fantasy or a worry story and see clearly the result? Did this also help to build a disenchantment with being lost in this future, with being lost in this story in the future? And even taking this practice and these reflections and seeing how we might build on these even in short moments throughout the day as we become to recognize these voices more and more, not just during moments when we are quiet and still, but moments of everyday life as well.